Welcome to Rhythms That Restore. I'm your friend Charisse that's ready to journey beside you. Let's learn rhythms that can restore our minds, hearts, bodies, and spirits, and allow us to walk confidently in who God has called us to be. Are you ready? Pull up a chair. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. So thrilled to have each of you pressing play and pulling up your chairs. I am thrilled that you're here. And I have to say, welcome to May. If you are listening in real time, it is May the 2nd, friends. You are either rejoicing because spring has finally come to your area, or you are also thinking, oh my goodness, we are in the home stretch. If you have small kids at home, you know that school will be out in the next 3 weeks. And some of y'all are teachers and you're like, oh, I know this. I know this very well. And so we're so glad that you're here and that you decided to say, you know what, I'm going to take some time for myself. I'm going to quiet my spirit, my heart, give my soul some room to breathe and to grow, right? And so that's why we're glad that you're here. So today I have been thinking all week long, what Lord, what do you have for us? What do you have for us to start off this month of May so that we can have life breathed back into us, so that we can be sustained to run at the pace required of us for the month of May? And honestly, I was looking for many different things. I was reading through things and I just kept thinking, what do you have for us, Lord? I'm listening. What do you have? And I went back to a message that I had just kind of journaled about a few weeks ago. Because though I was looking for messages all over the place, the Lord just kept saying, remain with me, remain with me, Charisse. That is what to do. And so I thought, you're right, Lord. So you guys, that's what it is for our month of May. We're really just tuning into how can I remain? And so with that being said, let's get started. And as we always do, again, y'all, I know we're all carrying so many things, but let's just take a deep breath in, big deep breath. Why do we do that? We're filling our brains and our bodies with oxygen. We're letting go of all the things that we carry. And we're reminding ourselves, we are human beings, not human doings. So let me start us off with John 15. It's John 15, really 1 through 8. I'm just going to read it all because it makes more sense. It says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that does not produce fruit, he removes, and he prunes every branch that produces fruit so that it will produce more fruit. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I in you. Just as the branch is unable to produce fruit by itself unless it remains on the vine, neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit, because you can do nothing without me. If anyone does not remain in me, he is thrown aside like a branch, and he withers. They gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you remain in me, and thy words remain in you, ask whatever you want, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you produce much fruit and prove to be my disciples. Wow. What did y'all hear? What's bubbling up in you as you ponder that truth? As you hear God's faithfulness, what did you hear? Did you know that the Bible says 238 verses guide us and show us the importance of the word remain? 238 times, y'all. What? And 118 times, it's reminding us to abide. 118 times, it's written the word abide. 238 times, it is written for us to remain. 40 times in the book of John, he shares abide in. 40 times that John would say, hey, just so you know, I'm going to remind you, abide. Jesus says, abide in me. I'm not sure if y'all have ever heard this, but I have heard this stat that as women, and maybe men too, but as women, we need to hear something 7 times in order to hear it once. 7 times to hear something once. And if you've ever been around small children or you have small children, you're probably thinking, Sharice, I have to tell them things like 20 times for them to hear it once. Well, don't you know that we can be just like little children and we have to hear things over and over and over again so that we can hear it and receive it. And so God knew that, again, as our good Father, he knows, I'm going to say this 238 times, and maybe they will hear it. And so, y'all, there's something in this message, something in this for us for this month of May. Let's think about that some more. Our culture doesn't really glorify, encourage, challenge, or celebrate us for remaining, does it? Our attention spans have become 4 seconds. We're all working on that, right? We barely sit to read the paper or a book. Think of the last time that you just went in your backyard and you sat in a rocking chair or a hammock for no reason. You weren't watching the kids. You just sat to let the sun bask on your face. When was the last time? Or let's think about this, even sticking with something, right? Remaining. When was the last time that you just stuck with something hard? Maybe a project for school, a project for work, maybe even a feeling that was yuck, right? Something that was uncomfortable, maybe had you feeling a little angsty, that you just kind of noticed and that you stayed with it. But what we can tend to do is move through it quickly, right? We don't like uncomfortable. We don't like feelings that are ick. So we move through it. We either push it down, which we're all working through, or we move through it quickly. We don't remain in it, right? We don't want to remain because we want to move through it fast. We want everything to be light and easy and fun and quick. But think back to times in our lives, and we all have them. Let's think back to times in our lives that we did remain. We stayed the course. We did the hard thing. We stayed in that season of life that it didn't feel good and it was tough. When we look back on that now, what came from that season? A lot of good, right? You bared fruit. Is that the right saying? I don't know. You saw fruit from that season that you remained in. Whether you liked it or not, you can see the fruit, the character that it produced in you, whatever the outcome was. When we all look back on seasons that we remained, we see fruit. And maybe some of us might even say, Sharice, the month of May is a hard season. It's going to feel difficult. I don't really want to remain in the month of May. I get it. But what if we reframe it? What if we reframe instead of saying or even going into it saying, it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard. What if we just say, Lord, what do you have tucked inside this month for us? How can we practice the presence of just noticing you in this month that probably is going to be a tad bit busier than normal? What if we put that on, right, as our lens, as our glasses that we're going to wear for the month of May? We could call them our practicing the presence glasses. And we're going to look through that lens and say, Lord, you've got something tucked inside every moment that might not be normal. It might not be my normal routine. It might not be my normal situation. There's something that you're trying to teach me. What can I see? I'm going to be looking through the lens. And so in my Bible, the section that I was reading about, there's a really cool little devotional that she has next to it. And so the version I have been using is the She Reads Truth Bible. I'm going to show you all on YouTube if you're watching it there. It's the She Reads Truth. And see, it just kind of has a little section in here. And she goes about it. And I think it was so beautiful because it's how we as women can be. She describes herself as the queen of focusing on the wrong things. And we can kind of do that with the month of May, can't we? We can focus on the things that are frustrating. I'm speaking to myself. We can focus on the things that are frustrating, that we don't have control of, and we can let our eyes only go there. However, there's lessons that are tucked inside if we're going to focus on the right thing. And so she says in here, we can even hear this passage in John 15. And again, through the lens that we're looking through or the ears that we are listening through, we might be all hearing something a little different. Let me read it again. And I want you to see what perks up on your ears. It says, remain in me and I in you. Just as a branch is unable to produce fruit by itself unless it remains on the vine, neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit, because you can do nothing without me. So what did you hear? What perked up on your ears? Did you hear abide, remain in me? The beauty of being able to just be with Jesus, just abide in him, be connected with him, right? Or did you hear produce much fruit to prove that you are my disciple? Y'all, when I read this and when I was journaling about it, I wrote down, I have tears in my eyes. I think I had to take a little cry break because I heard produce. Why are you not producing more? Why are you not you got to produce more, Sharice, to prove that you are my disciple. That was what I heard. And she even says it in here. She said, this is what she said, but do you know what I hear? I hear bear fruit. Or to be more specific, hey, you, why aren't you bearing fruit? I, the queen of focusing on the wrong things, read Jesus' words and hear all of the goal and none of the grace. Do you ever do that? Do you hear his words and you know his truth, but you only hear the goal and none of the grace? We want the end, but we forget the means. Wow. Y'all, we can all be guilty of that, but that's not what Jesus hears. That's not what he says. That's not what he's saying to us. Jesus is not asking us to bear fruit. The command is to remain. When we remain, we abide in the never-ending, unconditional, forever love of Christ. Then the fruit will come, but only in the remaining. We bear fruit when and only when we are grafted into the vine. His Holy Spirit in us is the fruit producer. He's the one that produces the fruit. We are simply branches who have the privilege of displaying his fruit when we are abiding. How cool is that? Y'all, we are known. We are known by the fruit that we produce. And what is the fruit? Like, how will people know that we are being women who remain in the vine? Well, that's when we can see the evidence of love in our life, the evidence of joy, evidence of peace, patience, evidence of gentleness and kindness and self-control. That's how we know the fruit, because we are doing our work, right? What can we control? We can control abiding. We can control showing up and being intentional with our time with Jesus. So what does remain look like? How can we abide daily in him in the month of May or whenever you're listening, and his words so that it can take root in our hearts and bear fruit? Well, the number one way that we can do that is we can start with prioritizing our time in his presence and in his word, right? So we can start with prioritizing our time. Just like any relationship, y'all, we cultivate that relationship when we spend time with that person. And so practicing the presence of being with him is spending time in his word. And again, sometimes we can get caught up in, I was talking to a friend yesterday, and we can get caught up in, oh, I didn't have my quiet time and it didn't look like this. I wasn't sitting in a chair. I wasn't drinking my coffee. I think that we oftentimes need to remember, let that go. It doesn't have to look perfectly. Practicing the presence of being with Jesus is just recognizing him in our everyday life, right? We can also place that expectation on ourselves of, I need to do my quiet time. But again, that's not what Jesus said. He says, abide in me, show up and be with me. So the first maybe rhythm we could get into for this month of May is, Lord, how can I start prioritizing time with you? How can I start looking for you in the everyday spaces that I have? So we could start with that. And that could look different for all of us, but that's a question you can answer for yourself. The second thing we can do, allow for some space that you can actually breathe, rest, and let things marinate and give your soul room to settle. I keep having this visualization of like a glass of water that had, I don't even know, sediment in it. And life can be like stirring this glass, and just everything is all over in this glass, right? Think about that. And when you finally take the spoon out and stop stirring, all that sediment will rest to the bottom. Y'all, that's what is happening with our souls when we don't give it room to settle, room to be still. It's constantly moving. Those pieces, that peace that our soul is longing for, it can't settle. And so for this month of May, what if we allowed for that space? Again, it's not going to look perfect. It doesn't mean you're going to be sitting in your hammock every day. It might mean that you're in your car a lot more. It might mean that you're on a field trip. It might mean that you're, taking the bus and not driving to work, or taking the train, or who knows. It's just not your normal schedule. So this month, I want to challenge y'all to lean in a way that might not feel comfortable. If your natural bent is to always have the radio on, always have the TV on, always be listening to a podcast, maybe this month, instead of constantly tuning into noise, you say, I'm noticing this. How can I lean the other direction? I'm going to lean into silence. I'm going to allow for quiet, Lord. Okay, if your bent is to always sit inside, maybe for this month, you say, I'm going to go sit on the porch. I'm going to go for a walk. Whatever it is, if your bent is inside, get outside more. If you tend towards always being with others, then maybe this month you say, I'm just going to lean into a way that's not comfortable for me. I'm going to lean the other way. I'm going to give space where is needed. Right? And maybe if you're more of an introvert, you're going to say, okay, Sharice, I hear you. How can I gather with others? Maybe my soul needs connection. Maybe my soul needs community. Find some trusted friends that you can share. You can dig deeper. You can gather with a group. Maybe this month, if your natural bent isn't to listen to scripture, right? Like we've talked about in the Lectio Divina practice, maybe you listen and you grab a pen and a spiral notebook and you start journaling. Doesn't have to be anything profound. Just journal what you hear. Maybe God brings a memory to mind, a memory from childhood, and you write that down. Maybe you look and you see a flower or a tree or something in front of you. Just journal. Start asking, Lord, what do you have for me in this? Lord, what am I hearing? Lord, what do you want me to know? Again, practicing the presence. And we're just noticing. We're asking him how to show up. And the last thing I would love for all of us to remember in this month of May, as we are abiding and as we are remaining in him, is to find your own pace. Find the pace that works for you, one that can sustain you, right? Just like a runner, if we were at a track meet and we were watching all the track stars run, some run really fast and some run consistently and some run slow. Every single person has their own pace that's sustainable for their body. We must remember God designed you perfectly and you have your own pace. You can't compare yourself to someone else. You have to know what your priorities are and what's most important to you. I'm telling myself for this month, I have got to release pleasing others. I've got to release performing for others. I am running at my own pace. I am prioritizing what's important to me. I am releasing other people's approval and knowing that this is the pace that will bring me peace in my heart and in my soul. John Ortberg says it perfectly. I found it today in his book, Soul Keeping, on page 118. He again went back to John 15, reminding us that Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you will do nothing. John says, bearing fruit means that we will do wonderful things in our lives for God and his kingdom. But we don't really have to try all that hard. Instead, we are to make sure we are with God. That's what it means to abide in the vine, live intimately with Jesus from one moment to the next. If you don't do that, Jesus says nothing much will come out of your life. It's kind of like he invites his followers into an experiment because they're just ordinary people. How much can an ordinary person do in life on this earth with God in the ordinary moments? And how can I really make sure my soul is with God all the time? By abiding. Friends, Jesus is simply asking us to abide in him, remain with him. He came to make us new. He comes to redeem the dead branches that we can be and give us abundant life. Remaining in him, resting, dwelling, abiding in him is the only source of our strength, our goodness, and our fruit. Let's focus our eyes on the true vine today. Let us be all about the business of remaining in Jesus and trust his spirit to be about the business of bearing fruit in our lives, right? I love that. So do you think that we can all hold our hands open for this month that we are walking into and say, you know what? I can do that. I can abide in you, Lord. I can remain in you. I can run my own race at my own pace. I can allow for space to notice you, to ask you, Lord, what you have for me, what you're doing in this moment. And I can start with prioritizing you and being plugged in to you, the true source. I know I don't have to be the one to produce and to bear the fruit. I simply get to show up and remain and abide in you. Thank you for joining me on this journey of restoration and renewal. Remember, you can stay connected with me between episodes by following me on Instagram. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode. And if you found value in our conversation today, I'd truly appreciate it if you leave a review on your favorite podcast platform or share the show with a friend who might benefit from these rhythms. Until next time, may you find peace in knowing that you can show up every day simply as you are. And that is enough. Take care.